Okay, welcome. This is our last office hour. There will be no office hours next week. Work diligently. So, pragmatic therapy. So last week we talked about autism, and pragmatic language therapy to me also, I think it's pretty broad. There's a lot of social skills and things. And it's really, when we talk about it, it's really how do we use language in social situations? And there are people who have lots of language skills, but don't necessarily communicate effectively in social situations for a variety of reasons. Now, typically what we are addressing are the language deficits that impact their ability to interact in a social manner. Hold on, wait. 1 second, did I press record? I don't know why that's always hard for me. Or I do it and I don't think about it. 1 second. Let me stop share, make sure it's, yeah, it's recording. Sorry, I just want to make sure it is. Okay. These are the kinds of, nightmares I have that I was trying to, do office hour and I didn't hit record. Okay, so pragmatic language typically is how we teach people how to use language in social situations. And oftentimes we're looking at language deficits. So oftentimes when we're working just on your basic language skills, whether that's building vocabulary, formulating a sentence, asking a question, responding to a question, those all have social implications. Now, there are people that we work with who have excellent language skills, but still don't use language effectively in a social situation. And oftentimes, those are individuals on the spectrum, but not always. It's not always, and not always somebody who has a diagnosis of autism they don't necessarily always struggle in pragmatics. So those are some things. So my favorite website, me and my co-therapist, for all things pragmatic language, we really like social thinking. So we look at socialthinking.com, be familiar with it. A lot of the materials that we use, that I use, and I've used this in clinic as well as school-based, are from social thinking. So You Are a Social Detective, and that's really, I would say, working on those inferencing skills. Zones of regulation, I really like. So those are people who struggle with regulating their emotions or how they're feeling and being able to identify that, adjust how they're feeling or get them, ready. We call it ready to learn, the green zone. We want to be in the green zone, and kind of understanding that everybody goes through each of those zones and that's okay, but it's also how do we regulate ourselves? So those are some things, thinking about you, thinking about me, I really like. Lots of great resources on this website. So she has oftentimes some free, Michelle Garcia Winner is the main, therapist that kind of has spearheaded this social thinking curriculum. And oftentimes there's free webinars. So really there's some great things to learn. I do them, yeah. So Michelle Garcia Winner and Dr. Pamela Cook, those are the two clinicians that really started this. And there's great YouTube videos also. So if you want to learn more about it, I use a lot of this. And I think when we're looking at who benefits, I think a lot of people, not just an individual on the spectrum, benefits from this. I would say I've used some of these strategies with your average just language impaired person, and sometimes revisiting these things with adults. So definitely, I really, really enjoy this curriculum. I think it's applicable in a variety of ways for a variety of ages. So socialthinking.com. If you learn nothing out of this module, please remember that. So there's some apps. So there's a lot of social, what I would say, social story apps. There's lots of apps that help with social skills. So there's some, I like these are all and in fact, the one has just been updated. So I definitely like Stories to Learn, Social Detective. So that's the thinking curriculum. So they're putting more apps out, which I think is great. The Social Skill Builder, I like that. I think that I feel like they've improved it a little bit. I don't think that app's always intuitive. You have to kind of play around with it. But I like that it gives videos and then what should the response be? And then I like how it gives feedback to the person if they choose the correct choice or an incorrect choice. And then, so just looking at some of these 4 simple steps to social skills. So a lot of what we also work on are those, what I would call nonverbal skills. You know, assess and observe. So a lot of what we're trying to help others do is assess the social situation, read the room, so to speak. And really, this is why I love developmental preschool. So what I really enjoy about developmental preschool for any child with a language impairment is that it immerses them in a social situation, so they have to use their language skills. So I definitely see developmental preschool being such a benefit for pretty much every child who's language impaired. So I definitely see developmental preschool being a benefit to work on that pragmatic language piece. So there's some good other links on here you can look through. And really, this one still work. I think if one of these doesn't work in certain, oh no, it is working. And so definitely you can kind of look through here. There's lots of different things to look up. Social stories, definitely one of those. Social communication programs. So kind of be familiar. There's some other therapy approaches. So I like how this one breaks it down. So a lot of what we also do when we target social skills and pragmatic language are the nonverbal communication skills, the paralinguistic skills, the conversation skills, as well as assertive behavior. So there's a lot of initiating and kind of taking on that give and take, so that back and forth. And then how do you advocate for yourself? So assertive, definitely, like with my high school age group, as well as my adult group, we work a lot on self-advocacy. Hey, I didn't get that. Hey, can you explain that again? Or I don't agree with that. Here are my thoughts. So definitely sometimes, especially after someone who's had a stroke, we need to work on those things, or have aphasia, I should say. So in the reader review, there's lots of links. There's an example of a social story. So this is what I want to say, and there are thousands of social stories on the internet. Oh, here, hold on. What I want to say about that is that each person you make a social story for is unique. And what works for some might not work for others. A lot of times what I do with the social story, I start simplistic. And really it needs to be written in the positive, what the person is going to do, not what the person is not going to do. So a lot of times social stories is to help reinforce what we call replacement behavior. So I like this. Pragmatic language refers to the use of language in social situations. What I think is hard is sometimes this gets put on speech pathologists is if somebody has an emotional disability. So some of their inability to use appropriate pragmatic language has to do more with their primary disability. Now, can we support those people? We can, but I think we have to also be realistic in what we can accomplish, and we're not mental health workers. So sometimes that can get what I call the slippery slope. So what I see happen a lot, and my SLPAs, I think every single one of them have had this. So we're targeting pragmatic language, but there's some other dysfunctional responses that are kind of out of our scope. And that's where oftentimes we need a team of people supporting pragmatic language. Typically, there should be other professionals also supporting that in different ways. So, so these are kind of what a social language deficit might look like. And what I like is that it kind of gives a breakdown of what it should look like. So what do we expect the average 3- and 4-year-old to be able to do? So there's some great resources here. So vocabulary. So I want you guys to be real up to date. You will see this quite a bit in reports, in goals. You might see a goal for conversational rules, facial expressions, reading facial expressions, monotone, that mutual gaze. So that's that joint attention piece. Salutations. So I always like that. That word always cracks me up, because to me, we write greetings. Salutations to me is more, I don't know, European, but definitely the greetings are, hellos and goodbyes as well. How do you address people also? So sometimes too, when I kind of work on that with our high school age population, we talk a lot about how do you address a boss versus a friend, and social rules. So there's a template link. Now, what I want you to do is make your own social story. So pick a skill. It can be that we're going to greet others. We're going to respond to questions. We're going to say hello when we meet new people. Oftentimes I wrote a social story about coming into the classroom. So we have one particular student who doesn't like to follow the rules or notice what everybody else is doing. So I wrote a social story about how they were going to come in, put their backpack away, and sit at their assigned desk. Definitely working on some of these things. So there's plenty. And honestly, this is what I want to say is you will likely make up your own, because usually you'll find some basic ones like brushing your teeth, or combing your hair, or getting ready in the morning, stuff like that. But when working with a particular client, there'll be something specific. I think as an SLPA, I wrote probably on average 20 or 30 a year. Now as an SLP, I just writing a new one today. We use it for a variety of reasons. And I think a lot of times what I tend to use it as my go-to is the reminder for what's the appropriate behavior. What do we want to see the person do? So if you're having a hard time coming up with what to write a social story about, send me a message. But you will do that. This will be something you do. There's a template on this link. You don't have to use the template, but I just gave you guys a template to start with. Now, somebody asked, does it have to have pictures? Ideally, we're using social stories for our, what I say, younger age groups, but I would write a social story in words with maybe just one picture reinforcing. So oftentimes, for instance, like this particular student I'm writing this for is literate. He can read, but what I'm wanting to do is I am putting pictures in it to show. So I've taken pictures of him when he's putting away his backpack appropriately, sitting at the right desk, and doing those things. So I am putting pictures of him in that to reinforce the behavior. He doesn't need pictures to understand the social story. Sometimes they need pictures because they can't read, but oftentimes there's a picture and a sentence. So I would say, well, the usual flow of social stories is a picture, a sentence, a picture, a sentence, a picture, a sentence. So usually one picture per sentence, or one picture for one or two sentences about what the client is going to do. So those are kind of just some things to think about. But if you Google social stories, you'll see a lot of great ones. Now, somebody sent me a message, I think it was yesterday. Can I use one from the internet? This is what I want to tell you. Yes, you can use one from the internet, but I would like you to either put it in template or rework it. You can start with the concept. And the reality is, so for instance, there's one I Google every time, it's like about the fire drill. We see those all over. And it's so funny because there's like 5 or 6 of them I see that you can download for free on the internet. and I'll see them all over. I go to a campus, I'll see it. I went into a therapy clinic not too long ago, a couple weeks ago. A friend of mine opened one up in the West Valley. I was over there and saw one right there on our board, and I was laughing about it. I was like, I think we all have this one. So do we use ones? Yes. So this is what I want to say. If you use one, kind of put it in your own, put your own spin on it, is what I will say, and just credit the source. So those are some things too that just as long as you annotate where it's from, I am fine with that. Okay, and then there's a quiz. So please review the vocabulary. That will mostly be the quiz. And then there's a read and review. So really what I want you to do is explain 3 characteristics of pragmatic language disorder. Now, the reason why I really want you to understand that is because you will get a lot of goals. You will get a lot of clients on your caseload, outpatient, home health, and school-based that need pragmatic language support. So they'll need therapy to work on these. You will get these goals. So just, what are the 3 key components that we see with pragmatic language disorder? So be familiar with that. And that's really all this week here. Let me do this 1 second. Oh dang, it won't let me minimize. I always forget that when I'm recording. I should have pulled one up. I wonder if it'll let me. One second. Let me see if I can find one. One minute. I know I have one. One second. Here we go. Can you guys see that?
I see you.
Do you see me? Okay, hold on 1 second. See, when I move around in my computer, here we go. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so here's just an example of one, like a social story about using my hands with kindness and respect. So it's obviously for someone maybe doing things with their hands they shouldn't have. Hands not for hitting, my hands are for being a good friend. Hands are for giving a high five. I can also, and usually typically we don't write no hitting. For whatever reason, that's in there. Maybe because that's the problem behavior. So we're working on a replacement behavior. So my hands are for being a good friend. We show people, playing nicely, giving a high five, shake hands, for nice touching, building. So they're talking about what do we use our hands for? Make cool things. My teachers and friends like to see things I make. My hands are for doing my work. Everyone's proud when I do my work type thing. So playing with my friends, safely with them. So it's a lot of reinforcing of my hands are safe. Obviously, I'm doing fun things with my hands. I'm doing work-based tasks with my hands. I'm not hitting, obviously. So these are just kind of one thing that you'll see. If you Google it, I need to raise my hand. They might be reinforcing raising your hands instead of, slamming the desk to get someone's attention. So definitely, giving a lot of reinforcing of what should our hands be doing. And it's oftentimes too, we try to associate positive feelings about what we're reinforcing. So for instance, if we're trying to get them to be independent, like getting ready for school in the morning, getting dressed, I feel good when I can, dress myself, or we try to put some kind of emotion into it too, to kind of reinforce that this makes people happy, or people like me when I do these things, or people think good thoughts. So social thinking, we talk a lot about what are other people's perceptions. So I try to start building that young. Hey, you know what? That makes me happy to see that you are doing this. This makes me feel good that you can do that on your own without help, or whatever it is. You know, just really trying to show them that, or give reinforcement. It's okay to ask for help. I am here to help you, but I want you to use, you know, I want you to ask. So oftentimes too, there's some kind of behavior that we're trying to reduce. So we're trying to reinforce the appropriate replacement response instead of the behavior. So those are some things too that it'll be something random. We had a kid who liked swinging his backpack everywhere. I wrote a social story about wearing the backpack, and it goes on your back and it doesn't get swung around in the hallway when you're mad, things like that. So yeah, there's always something random that you are like, oh, I should write a social story about what we do instead. So that's one of the main therapeutic interventions that we do for pragmatic language. But I have to say, just working in a group, interacting, game playing is a huge part of pragmatic language therapy. So for instance, when we are doing games, and you know, it irks me a little bit when people are like, they're just playing a game. Well, no, there's a lot of components to playing a game. There's a lot of social skills and language-based components to playing a game. And even just that mere fact of waiting your turn has a lot of social implications. And you know, there's a lot of, you can ask for clarification. There's a lot of skills you can reinforce in game playing, especially if you have the opportunity to be in a group. So sometimes just one-on-one, oftentimes that's the other part I think that can be challenging, is that they do okay in a one-on-one situation with an adult, but when they're in a peer group, so kind of that next step of working on the pragmatic language piece is putting it in a group. So that's what's fun. I think that's what can be challenging in a clinic-based setting or a home-based setting when we're working on pragmatic language. It's really what's fun about schools. We can kind of put the client in that setting to have them demonstrate they have the skills, have them show us what they're generalizing and what they're not. So I do like pragmatic language therapy better in a school-based environment, but you can always work on it. It doesn't matter what therapy setting. We're usually always working on it in some capacity and reinforcing it if we're working on language. So any other questions?
I have a question about the final.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to be due on the 21st as well?
Yeah, I was just double checking with Amy. Everything's going to be due on the 21st. So that's when things close, is my understanding, but I was just double checking that. But the final's open. Hold on, I will make sure that it's open, and the study guide should be up. I will double check and make sure the study guide's there.
Yeah, it is. I already checked.
Okay, yeah, I think I thought I checked that last week, because there's a couple of people who are finished. But I think the final is open for everybody. So if you want to take it, I suggest, and there's no office hours next week. So I'll post some updates in the announcements. But I want to say it's the 21st.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you guys so much.